Hello, in this video I'll be talking about finding the percent of a number. This has many applications, such as buying things that are on sale for a certain percentage off, figuring out who's going to vote for certain presidential candidates, what percent of the time quarterback completes a pass. So there's plenty of applications for this. So let's say we were going to find 40% of $32. Now, one way we can do this is to make a model. So I've made two different models, so let's just cover up one of these for a moment. Alright, so we're going to talk about this model here. So let's picture this long rectangle representing the whole price of this thing, $32. So I'm going to write that in here. So this whole rectangle is going to represent $32. Alright. I'm also going to use it to represent 100%. So this represents 100%. The whole price, 32 bucks. Now, 100% divided into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 squares would be 10% apiece. Alright, so what we have here is 10%. 10%. I'm just going to keep cloning that. There we go. And two more. Alright, so each of these squares or rectangles is going to be worth 10% of the price. And if we divide $32 by 10, we get $3.20, which I'm going to write here. $3.20. And let's see if we can clone that as well. We'll change it up. We'll try an infinite cloner this time. 320. Oh, we need a little smaller. Alright, let's try that again. $3.20. Alright, so each of these rectangles represents $3.20. It also represents 10%. And so if we want to find 40%, we just need to talk about 4 of the rectangles. So 2, 3, 4. If we just want to talk about these 4, then we'll get 40%. And so all we'd need to do is add up 320 4 times, or multiply $3.20 times 4, and we'll get $12.80. So there's one way to show a model. And as you can see, I already made a different model, so you wouldn't have to divide by 10. In this case, I divided this whole amount into 5 rectangles. So in this case, again, the whole thing represents 100%. And again, this whole thing is representing $32. This time I split it into 5 squares, so each one would be 20%. I'll just write it this time since it's only 5. And then 32 divided by 5 would be not 320 but $6.40. And that would be true for all of those squares. Now, if I'm looking for 40%, in this case, I only need 2 sections. So 2 of these sections added together would be, again, $12.80. So 640 plus 640 would equal 1280. So there's 2 different models you could have used to figure out what 40% of $32 is. Okay, let's go into another problem. Let's say we wanted to find 22% of 288. Well, 22%, that wouldn't really work with this model or with this model. Turns out we'd have to divide 100% into a lot more squares to figure out 22. So that wouldn't really be a great way to go about it. So what we can do is use a decimal. Now in the last video we talked about how we could change a percent into a decimal. You'll probably remember that 22% means 22 per 100, and that when we change that to a decimal it looks like 0.22. So 22% of 288 can also be found by saying 0.22 or 0.22 times 288. The of in this type of percent problem means multiplication in math. Okay, so we say 22% of 288, and then we just have to do some multiplication. 288 times 0.22, we're going to get 16, 17, 5, placeholder 0, we get 16 again, 17 again, 5 again. So we get 6, 13, 13, and 6. And we're going to need two numbers after a decimal here, so it's going to be 1, 2, so 63.36. 63.36. What I like to do after I finish a calculation like this, because there's lots of opportunities to make a mistake, I like to decide if my answer makes sense. I know that 10% of 288 is going to be about 28 or 29, which is really close to 30. So 20% would be really close to 60, and 22% would be a little more than 60. So this makes a lot of sense after I do my calculation here. We could also check it on a calculator and find that that is correct. Well, I might as well check it since I'm telling you to do that. Got my trusty phone calculator. 288 times 0.22 equals 63.36. Great. Alright, let's try another technique. Sometimes we can use mental math. So suppose 25% of 80 students vacation in Florida. Find the number of students who vacation in Florida. Well, we know that 80 students total, but only 25% of them vacation in Florida. After you use percents a lot, you're going to find that 25% is equal to 1/4, which is pretty easy to see if you were to make like a circle, right? 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%. That's 100%. So we know that 25% is 1/4, so we need to find 1/4 of 80. And I mentioned before that the word of means multiplication. And so 80 divided by 4 is 20. So 20 students vacation in Florida. And it's called mental math because I would be doing this all in my head. I wouldn't actually write it down, but I have to write it down to show you what I'm thinking mentally. So you can use any of these techniques to find the percent of a number. Thanks for watching.